Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. Jacqueline. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. Jacqueline at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hi, red.olaughlin. I'm on the USA Global TV and radio network and on the program called Talking Heads, where we have a chance to share some knowledge, experience, and add value to people's lives. And in my case, I'm in the health and wellness end of things, and everything starts with awareness. And so as we're starting to look at the aspects of our life, I pull these slides up here. Okay. We have to start with awareness because that's the first part. And as I'm providing this information, we go from awareness to education to action, and I'll recover that at the end. But the introduction today is this is a Talking Heads program. It's usually a segment of 6 lectures or 6 presentations. And we've talked about what is fat as part of the fat management program. We talked about what causes fat to go into a fat cell. We talked about what causes fat to come out of a fat cell. Today, we're going to talk about what causes fat to burn. Next week, we're going to talk about what stops fat from burning. And then 2 weeks from now, we're going to talk a little bit about diet and exercise and what does that really do? A disclaimer, I'm a researcher. I do not have a medical degree. I do not have any business working in the medical field, pharmacology, or anything like that. I research the human body at the cellular level. Chemically speaking, I look for cause and effect relationships. Treat a cause, fix a problem. Treat a symptom, and you'll always be treating a symptom. So as you look at what happens, can you stop something from happening if you know what to do? And that's the area that I concentrate on. In a particular case here, what causes fat to burn? Well, if the fat is sitting there in the fat cell, well, how do you get it out and how do you make it burn? That's kind of the process that we want to do. But we also need to be aware of what caused the fat to go into the fat cell to begin with, what causes it to come out. We talked about that last week. But more importantly, okay, the fat is now flowing through our blood. What do we do to actually burn it? And then next week we'll talk about, well, if you do these things, you're shutting everything down and going back to where you were. So, but fat management, I'm talking about the body's ability to store and retrieve fat. And that's what we're talking about. So let me get here to the next page. Okay. We think about burning fat to lose inches or lose weight. And that's typically the way our brains are configured. Fat is used as a fuel source, but it's not actually burned. What happens is the metabolic process that fat is used that actually gives the body energy, whether that energy comes from a ketone or a stored sugar, glycogen that I'll talk about in a second. That byproduct, that metabolic byproduct is water, and that comes out either by sweat or through urination, or it comes out through carbon dioxide when we're breathing. I'm one of those few people who rarely ever gets up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. I just don't do it. I can sleep for 10, 12, 15 hours. I don't get up. Regardless, if I take my weight, and I've done this many, many times in the past, and let's say I weigh, just pick a number, 190 pounds, and I go to bed, that's my weight when I crawl into bed. I get out of bed 10 hours later, and I'm now weighing 187. Okay, fine, I lost 3 pounds. But if I measure myself before I went to the bathroom, maybe what I'm looking at is I'm at 188.5, where I lost 1.5 pounds before I ever urinated. That is the exhaling. That's the respiration. That's the loss of that body fat that our bodies have burned while we were sleeping. And so that's the carbon dioxide that we're exhaling, and that's part of that weight loss. Now, that may not actually show up as inches or something like that, but it'll show up. So you have a little bit of water loss, a little bit of respiration, and that's how you see that actual loss in there. But our body fat is really there for energy. Now, the on-demand energy that we need is typically comes from our stored sugar that's floating around as glycogen in our muscles or free fatty acids in our bloodstream. And when they're tapped, okay, we need them right now. The energy's there. And fortunately, our bodies can use either glucose or ketones. And either one works well. A lot of articles say that our brains actually function a lot better. Our bodies actually function a lot better when we're in ketosis, that our bodies are burning ketones, fats, rather than sugars. And you hear this term that's been thrown around for I don't know how many years. 1 pound of fat is 3,500 calories. And so if I exercise 3,500 calories, I'm going to lose a pound of weight. So if I add an extra 500 calories every single day to my exercise regimen, at the end of the week, I've lost 1 pound. And if you've ever tried it, you'll find out, yeah, it might work for a week or two or three, and then it stops working. Well, our bodies adjust as we do things. And so as you eat less in order to exercise more or whatever it may happen to be, our basal metabolic rates are going to adjust to account for those changes. Now, 3,500 calories is literally what they equate, rough order of magnitude, to how much energy is in 1 pound of fat. Well, then if you ask yourself the question, well, how much can I actually live on a day without being in starvation? Well, the numbers come in anywhere from around 600 to 1,200, but basically 1,000, give or take a little bit, calories per day. So if you're less than 1,000 calories a day or less than 600, or then you're in what they call starvation mode. The body changes again. It's going to protect itself. Well, one of the things that I do quite frequently every month is I do a long extended 72-hour, 150-hour fast. And when you look at extended fast, certain things happen in the body. Well, one of the reasons I do the fast is for longevity reasons. If I look at a restricted calorie diet where I cut back, instead of a 15 calories per pound of body weight, which most nutritionists will tell us that, okay, you're at 150 pounds, you need 15 pounds, 2,250 calories per day to maintain body weight. Well, on a restricted calorie basis, you're cutting back calories about 30%, about 10 calories a day to maintain body weight. So in that particular case, a 150-pound person would be using 1,500 calories a day. Well, yeah, you're cutting back on calories, but that's not necessarily a guarantee to lose weight or lose inches. But it is a guarantee of sorts to live longer, live healthier, because it's more of a longevity issue than it is a weight loss issue. Dr. Walter Longo is with the University of Southern California, and he was the one that came up with the 3-day fast in order to rebuild your immune system. Your body shifts into a starvation mode at 3 days and gets rid of all cells that are non-functional, DNA, everything that's not working 100%, it gets rid of it. Well, they also did a 5-day fast and found out that your beta cells in your pancreas, especially for people with type 1, type 2 diabetes, there was some relief in being able to either make more beta cells or convert, in some cases, alpha cells, and make, regardless. The 5-day fast, it was the issue. Most people can't do a 5-day fast. It's a difficult thing to do. But they have what they call a fasting mimicking diet. It's 500 calories or so. So you're fasting, you're eating food, but your body thinks you're starving by not eating anything. So there's a lot of things out there, and just starting something without understanding what it is can lead to a little confusion. But what we're going to try to do today is to talk about the issues associated with what is fat and how do we burn it. So, as I said, fat is used as a fuel source, but only in one case only, and this is, take it to the bank. If you have no insulin flowing through your body now is going to be using the stored glycogen from your muscles until it's all used up, and then it's going to convert over and start using the fat and the fat cells you have. So the primary controller, so to speak, actually it's a non-controller, it's a door that's shut that doesn't allow anything to happen, is insulin. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But when you look at insulin, as we talked about last week, forces fat into a fat cell. There's another one, it's called LPL, lipoprotein lipase. That lipoprotein lipase, LPL, also forces fat into a fat cell. That the prime directive is just get that fat and store it. Well, fat, depending on what's going on in our body, our energy levels, sleeping, whatever, fat goes in and out of the fat cells all the time. It just, and if it's burned, it's burned. If it's not burned, it goes back and stored again. But what really causes us to burn the fat is the amount of energy that we're actually expending. Now, well, the energy can come in a number of different kinds of exercises and things, but at some point in time, that energy is just burning the sugar off that we had as part of the glucose. But what we're focusing on today is what we want to get to that fat cell. We want to get that fat. We want to burn it. We want to lose some inches. We want to lose some weight. So those are the things that really become critical as you start looking at what can I do? So how do I actually inhibit the insulin? Well, if I want to inhibit insulin, I have to stop something, eliminate carbohydrates. Yes, you can create insulin from protein. Yes, you can create insulin from fat. There are situations in the body where that will happen. But in reality, if I can inhibit insulin and now the other lipase that's out there, the hormone sensitive lipase, HSL, that's on the other side of the equation. It actually pulls fat out of the fat cell. Now that fat's in the bloodstream or available for burning, free fatty acids, and that is what that energy is now driving at. So if I can inhibit insulin, I am at least at the beginning. I've opened the door to burning fat. Well, how do I eliminate carbohydrates? How do I make that change? Well, obviously the first one is eliminate carbohydrates. That's probably easier said than done. If you've ever been heavily involved with simple sugars and you try to get off, it's almost like withdrawals. It's a hard thing to do, but you can change the kinds of food you're eating, change the frequency. A lot of times they'll say, we want you to have 5 or 6 or 7 small meals a day. Well, your blood sugar goes up and never comes down. Some people just have 1 meal a day. That means you're intermittent fasting for 18 or 20 hours a day. That actually has a lot of benefit. But it's the choice of food you're having and how long you're choosing to eat. So intermittent fasting could be anything from 12 hours, 15 hours, 18 hours, 20 hours. But intermittent fasting allows the body several things. It allows it to finally just relax and clean out the stuff that needs to be done, and you're not taxing it all the time. If you do an extended duration fast, it's more for longevity. Yes, you will lose weight because you have no calories in there that are causing blood glucose to be a problem. But fasting, I find to be one of the best things, and there's many reasons for that. The prime directive for having that energy burned is the exercise we choose. So if I have an exercise that involves a lot of duration, intensity, time, whatever, that's going to cause, I have a demand. I have to use fat because I've used up all my sugar, my glycogen in my muscles. The body's going to convert over just automatically. It's like you flip a key. It starts working now. You're burning fat. But what else can help that? Well, adrenaline, one of the stress hormones, actually increases the basal metabolic rate. So now you're burning at a higher rate than you would normally. HIIT, high intensity interval training. This involves a lot of things. And when I get into exercises in a couple of weeks, for me, it's sprints. That to me is the number one HIIT. In fact, it probably is the number one for everyone. But you could be jumping rope. You could be doing push-ups till you can't stand it anymore. But it's a high intensity. You're maxing out everything you're doing at one time. And this is absolutely literally the fastest way to burn fat. Human growth hormone is a byproduct of fasting. The easiest way to increase human growth hormone is to fast. You can also increase human growth hormone by high intensity interval training. But what does HGH really do? Well, HGH, when we're a toddler, it's everything in control of our life. It's the one that's telling everybody, okay, I need these hormones here, these enzymes here, and it's the person in charge. As you get to be a teenager, you're losing a little bit. You're in your 20s, 30s, you're losing more. Your 50s, 60s, you lost over half. You're in your 70s, 80s, you're down 10%. And when there's nobody in charge, chaos reigns. We start seeing a lot of problems with issues, there's deficiencies on top of that. It's just a major problem. So if you can keep your HGH levels up, by fasting or by exercise, then something's there in charge. Now, a 20-hour fast might increase your HGH levels 1,000%. So if you're at 10% of what you were before, now maybe you're back into the range of being a preteen. But that HGH does a lot of things. And one of the things it does is increases the need for fat burning. In other words, it's going to say, yeah, you got some glycogen over there, but I really want to use this fat as the primary energy source. So it's going to go over there and change the body's preferences. So if I have high levels of HGH, just think back when you were a teenager, you could eat anything you wanted. You didn't put on any weight because the HGH was in control. And it says, yeah, let's just burn this fat. We'll save the other part for later on. But it stimulates the fat burning. It's one of those things. Yeah, it's just another one of the switches that says, yeah, let's crank this up a little bit. But another thing that it does, I mentioned earlier that LPL likes to take and push fat into a fat cell. HGH, human growth hormone, shuts down that LPL ability to do that. It inhibits the LPL's ability to put fat into a fat cell. So if you have no insulin, the LPL is there, it would normally push fat into a fat cell, but we don't want it there. We want it out. So HGH, as we increase our exercise, we increase a number of different things, fasting. Now that HGH is really pushing the fat to be burned because the hormone sensitive lipase, ASL, is pulling it out of the cell and there's nothing there to counter it. So it blocks the LPL. It's just, I'm a true believer in HGH. It's just one of those things that I wrote a book on it. Sleep. If you're not getting good sleep, you're disrupting everything in your body that's causing a problem. When you're sleeping, you're burning calories, you're burning fat. If you're in ketosis, which means now you're only burning ketones, you've exhausted the body's supply of glycogen. There are little tricks you can use. Let's say that you're out and you're doing exercises at the gym and it's just before you go to bed, 3 hours before you go to bed. Well, just because you're doing resistance training, lifting weights or some other kind of resistance activity, that takes a while for the muscles to actually adjust and come back to normal. You also have a lot of things that have to happen in sleep for repair of those muscles. But the resistance training, yeah, you did it 3 or 4, 5 or 6 hours ago, but you get the benefit of it while you're sleeping. And sleep also enhances the body's ability. If you're not getting enough sleep, you want to eat more. It's just one of those things that your body fat goes up, your belly fat increases. That's kind of a symbol of, it's just one potential symbol. I got a little extra roller around the middle. Well, how's your sleep? That might be something to work on. Thyroid. Everybody seems like they have a thyroid problem. They put on weight. Well, if you have too little thyroid, yeah, you do have a problem. You have a lot of thyroid, you don't have a problem generally. It's a fast burning. It cranks up the fat burning metabolism. It's really a good thing. And if you Google, Dr. Google, Dr. YouTube, how do I increase thyroid? Well, there are a number of, B12 is a really good one. Unfortunately for B12, for vegans, it's hard to get B12 unless it comes from an animal fat or you take it from a supplement. B12 is a cobalamin. Cobalamins do not survive stomach acid. So if you're taking in a pill and you're swallowing it and you think you're getting B12, you're not. You have to put it under the tongue and let it seep into the bloodstream that way. So if you're taking a methylcobalamin, that's the one that goes under the tongue, goes into the body, and you're actually getting the B12. If you're taking the cyanocobalamin, which comes in a tablet form, it's going in the toilet for all practical purposes. Mind over matter. If your subconscious mind has seen a lot of failures in your life at dieting, at losing weight, I talked recently about New Year's resolution. Why not change from I want to lose 10, 12, 15, 20 pounds to I want to lose 2 inches? Well, the body's never had a challenge to lose inches. They've always had a challenge to lose pounds. So you change the focus of your brain. If your brain, your subconscious mind, doesn't have the ability to recognize a failure or a success in that area, it's going to give you free latitude to do things. But if you fail 15 times at dieting, it's not going to let you fail again. It's going to sabotage everything you're doing. So your mind is actually being conditioned to If you fail before, you're going to fail again. It's hard to overcome. And part of the problem is that when we start a program and we don't see success uh, immediately, we tend to go back to what we were doing. We tend to go back to that comfort zone we were in. So if I'm not seeing something, I'm in ketosis, I can take a ketosis stick. Yeah, I'm in ketosis, but I'm not losing. Just because you're in ketosis doesn't necessarily mean you're 100% losing what you need to be doing. And this is a key problem because we expect that to happen usually within 72 hours, sometimes less. But some people, they have a problem. There's insulin resistance, there's leptin resistance, and we have it takes time. And it's not uncommon for some people to take days rather than hours to overcome this resistance. It takes maybe weeks, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks before they actually start seeing something actually happening that they can measure. And as such, they've given up at week 2 because they're not seeing anything. So mind does matter, but you have to realize you don't have to realize it's just part of this is the chemical makeup of our body, that we have a subconscious mind that has control over certain things, but we also have systems in our body that are working. Uh, if we have insulin resistance, then that resistance is going to delay the time for other things to happen because it's going to keep insulin in our bodies longer. And that insulin is not going to allow the fat out. Leptin comes from our fat cells. It's a hormone created by our fat cells that tells the brain, okay, I've had enough. I don't need any more. Stop eating. But when we have leptin resistance, we have so much fat, we're overpowering the brain. The brain can't handle all those communication signals at one time, and so it ignores everything, and we keep eating. And so when you have leptin resistance on top of insulin resistance, we have lots of complexity there. So as we're trying to get all these things in order, it's difficult without understanding there are things happening that I may need to go, how do I conquer leptin resistance? How do I conquer insulin resistance? Dr. YouTube, Dr. Google, great sources. I love Dr. Berg, Berg, has multiple videos on YouTube that just really answers the questions a number of different ways. Triglycerides, we hear about that. That's one of those things that's measured as a blood fat, a fat in our body. Well, our livers actually convert those into ketones. So as we're getting further and further into burning fat, we're going to be in this ketosis state, and the triglycerides that are coming out of the fat cells are actually now going to be made into ketones, and that's what we're actually going to be burning. So we don't want to confuse what I consider water weight loss with fat loss. In other words, let's say that I measure my first week, I've lost 10 pounds, 2 inches. Wow, I made great success. And then all of a sudden I'm on a plateau. I can't lose a thing for 2 weeks. And that's where our mind and our bodies, but I used to be on Atkins for about 6 years. I read 5 or 6 books on Atkins, thought it was pretty safe for me. I went on it. I lost 7 inches, 40 some pounds, in about 4 months. I thought that was the greatest thing going. I was living over in Germany at the time. I'd go down to Italy for a weekend and I'd gain 12 pounds literally in a weekend. I'd come back and it would take me 2 weeks to lose that water weight gain that I had lost. Water weight is there when we're starting to eat carbs. So if you're eating carbs, you have a certain amount of water weight that we have in our bodies. But that water weight can fall away a pound or 2 or 3. And it looks like we're making really good success. But all we're doing is eliminating the water from our bodies that would come because we're not using carbohydrates to replenish it. As I mentioned in the last slide, ketosis can start in hours if you're, depending on how your body is, 24 hours in some cases. But in some cases, maybe 3 or 4 days for some people. It may be 4 or 5 or 6 weeks for others. You slip up a little bit. Okay, I'm just going to have that apple pie looks really good, or whatever it may happen to be. French fries. You pick your poison. It doesn't matter. Now all of a sudden, the insulin's back in the body. Everything is shut down from a fat burning perspective. Boom, you're back to day one. You got to start all over again. A lot of carbs actually can come from veggies and fruits, but we're not talking about 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 grams. When I was on Atkins, I was typically, generally speaking, less than 10 grams a day for weeks on end. Absolutely love the diet. I was, meat, eggs, cheese, fats, just everything except for green vegetables and fruits. For whatever reason, I missed that chapter. And even today, when you go look at Atkins books, they don't really talk about what happens if you're not eating veggies and fruits as part of your carbs. Well, the pH of your body is determined by the food you eat and a little bit by the metabolism that you have. So if I'm exercising a lot, my body's going to become more acidic. If I'm eating fats, carbohydrates, proteins, my body's going to become acidic. If I'm eating fruits and vegetables, my body's going to become alkaline. So I need to eat more fruits and vegetables in order to be more alkaline than acidic. Why is this important? Because your blood maintains a pH about 7.4, give or take 0.05. And when the blood pH is less than that, it's acidic, it's going to reach out and grab a hold of calcium out of your bones in order to maintain the pH inside the blood. I never realized this. I had been weightlifting for decades, I've been running for decades. And somewhere after the time I got out of the Navy, I took my first bone density test. I was shocked. I was osteopenia. I said, there's no way in the world that could possibly happen. But as I started researching it, I found out that because I was in acidosis, I was living in an acid environment day in, day out because of my food choices. My body was leaching calcium from my bones, making them weaker. But calcium is keeping it in the bones is difficult because calcium, if you're getting it, say, from your leafy green vegetables or from a particular supplement, it comes to the body, gets in the stomach. If you have enough magnesium, it's going to make it bioavailable. You're going to actually get some of it. Otherwise, it ends up in the toilet. It goes, leaves the stomach, goes through the duodenum. If you have enough vitamin D3, now it actually gets into the bloodstream. Otherwise, the calcium ends up in the toilet. Now that calcium has a choice to go to your bones and give you nice, healthy, strong bones, or become plaque in your heart, calcium deposits, depending on whether you have vitamin K2 or not. So getting it into the bones is one thing. Keeping it there is another. And so as you start looking at keto diets, most of it's fat, most of it's protein, a little bit of carbohydrates. And you have to really be selective on the carbohydrates you choose. You have to be very, very selective on the fats you choose. So there's a lot of issues there that come with that. The ketones that our body uses are easily adaptable for anything. I mean, in fact, some literature says it's better to burn ketones than it is to burn sugar. But our energy demand varies whether we're awake or asleep. So if you're awake, you can do a lot of things. But the type of exercise, as I mentioned earlier, high intensity interval training, HIIT, that is the absolute fastest way to burn fat because you are pushing everything to the limit. Your body cannot go any faster, cannot put any more exhaustion out more than that. But as you look at, you have a certain period of time that's the duration. That's the ramping up of that exercise. So if I'm doing a sprint, I may only be able to sprint for 15 or 20 seconds at full max power. I do it a few more times, I might be good up to 20 or 30 seconds. I can't do full max 100-yard dashes for 2 minutes at a time. It's impossible. So your body's going to say, hey, I can't do it anymore. But that first part, your nervous system is the one that's actually causing everything to happen out there. And it's causing the blood pressure to go down. It's causing your pulse rate to go up. And then you get to that peak and you stop. That exercise is now technically over and by the demand, but because there's residual, that intensity kind of starts to fall off, and now your parasympathetic nervous system causes the pulse rate to go down, your blood pressure to go back up again. And so you look at that cycle. You have the activity, the intensity, the duration, and then the rest. And then you have the recovery part. Well, as we look at our recovery, that is something that really tells us how well we're doing. So if I'm taking my pulse, and if I go out and run a 100-yard dash and I get it done in 25 seconds, my pulse is 160. For me, I measure how fast can I get it back down under 120? How fast can I get it under 100? I would ideally like to get it back down to my normal resting heart rate. But that time, when I'm in good shape, it's less than a minute, 30 seconds, 40 seconds. I'm back down under 120. That's something that if you're doing a lot of high intensity exercise, take your pulse and record it. Take a look at it, what it is 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes after that exercise, because that gives you a good qualitative assessment of how effective that exercise was. Because if you're doing it now and it's taking 3 minutes to recover, then you do it again 2 weeks from now and you're taking 1 minute to recover. You've actually improved a lot during that period of time. That's a significant improvement. But that rest that you need in between, maybe that 3 minutes it took to get below 120 now is 1 minute. That's an important, that's a critical period of time because you need that rest to get everything back down. You can't get there with 140, I crank back up again to 160. You're not getting the benefit. You're actually probably doing more harm to the body. So look at the exercises you're doing, the frequency, the intensity, duration, but then also factor in, is my resting time enough? And then is my recovery time? If I'm doing these every single day, I'm not really having recovery. They tell you a couple days to recover, especially as you get older. You need a little bit more than that to fully recover. So the recovery on that is just as important. And most of us, I feel pretty good. Let me just go out and do it again. It's not exactly that way. And we'll talk more about that next week or 2 weeks from now, we're talking about exercises. So next week, we're going to talk about what stops fat from burning. If I'm burning fat, well, I know right now if I eat some carbohydrates, everything's going to slam the door. I'm going to start shoving fat back into the fat cell, and everything is going to stop burning. I'm not going to burn any more fat. Well, we're going to talk a lot more in detail about that because there's other things that need to be considered. Excess fat didn't happen overnight. It's not going to go away overnight, and it's not going to go away where you want it. When I was a little bit overweight, the first place I would lose weight was my neck. I have a 16.5-inch neck. I'd lose a little bit of weight. Now I'm back down to a 15.5, but I really didn't lose anything off my gut. And of course, being a Navy aviator, you're taking flight physicals, and one of the things they measure is your neck. Well, it seemed like that was always a double whammy because when I'd lose some weight, that's where all the weight got lost first. But anyway, if you're on any kind of prescription medicine, always consult your doctor if you're going to make any change whatsoever, anything in your lifestyle, because that may have a major function on whatever is happening, because you don't want to take a chance and make something worse by increasing your exercise or just trying to go into ketosis by dieting. Like I say, prescription meds, if you don't want to talk to your doctor, talk to a pharmacist. They probably have a tendency to understand it a whole lot better than that. I can be found at red.olaughlin.com. My email address is red@red.olaughlin.com. O'Laughlin is spelled OLAUGHLIN. OLAUGHLIN. So red, like the color, O'Laughlin.com. And Dr. Jacqueline, we're going to conclude this week's episode of Talking Heads on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you, Dr. Jacqueline.